Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Okay, as is our custom, before I introduce our speaker today, let's go around the room and say our names. If I may, I'll begin. My name is Roy.
My name is Henry.
My name is Robert. My name is Michael.
I'm Wally. I'm Benjamin.
I'm Harvey.
I'm Lee.
I'm Jerry.
I'm Joe Good.
I'm Jim.
Jim.
I'm Shantan.
My name is Ray.
I'm Kevin.
Harley.
My name is Cass.
I'm Paul.
I'm Bob.
My name is Tom Bruein.
My name is Jeff.
My name is Jerry.
My name is Jerry.
I'm Michael.
Richard Azzolini.
And I'm Daigan.
Thank you. Daigan Gaither began Buddhist practice in 1995 as a Vipassana practitioner and began to study Zen in 2003 with Paul Mahler. He received lay ordination in 2006 and priest ordination in 2011. His work and practice include many hours devoted to community service as one of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence since 1995 and a volunteer caregiver with Zen Hospice Project since 2003. Daigan is a full-time student working towards a graduate degree in Buddhist studies to become board certified as a chaplain. He's also the founder of San Francisco Zen Center's Queer Dharma, which meets once a month on Saturday afternoons. Welcome, Daigan.
Good morning. And thanks for coming out on Memorial Day weekend and Carnival and all of those amazing things and the 75th anniversary of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I was invited to go see a barbecue and a fireworks thing later. And I'm actually wanting to talk today about sex, and I want to talk about sex in a little bit of a different way than I think a lot of people want to think about it. And what I really want to talk about is sexual energy, and how is it that we relate to our own sexuality, and how is it that we relate to our sexuality in relationship to other people. I think that in Buddhism, in some certain aspects of Buddhism, sexuality and desire get a bad rap, and you can see it in the early sutras about cutting off the roots of desire and things like that. And I think that that's, particularly in the West, that can get really confusing for us because we don't have a lot of experience in that regard. And I was thinking while we were meditating, I was thinking about how when I sit, invariably one of my feet fall asleep. And it really doesn't matter which cushion I use or whether I'm sitting seiza or it really doesn't matter. One of my feet invariably falls asleep. And my relationship to my foot falling asleep can be different depending on how I feel about it. Some days I want to just move my foot and get that out of the way. And other days I can really use that as a Dharma gate to explore what is my relationship to being uncomfortable, to explore what is my relationship to my foot being asleep, to my body not getting what I want. And so I think that we can do the same with desire. Some days I just want to fulfill my desire. Cute boy walking down the street, I just want to get laid. other days, I can use this as a Dharma gate to really study what is my relationship to desire? What is my relationship to other people? What is my relationship to myself? How do I want to use this as a Dharma gate? I think that we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong, what works and what doesn't work. What's the best way for us to express our sexuality? And that's not what I want to do today. I actually really want you to encourage you and to practice with what is it that desire does for you? What is it that desire plays out for you? What is your relationship to this? Can you use, and can I use this as a gate to explore how it is that I want to relate to the rest of the world? I believe that we can be in the world in such a way that we can add things to the world, or we can be in the world in such a way that we can not add things to the world. And I prefer to be in the world in a way in which I'm bringing something to other people. I've taken vows to save all beings. So what does that mean in relationship to sex and sexuality? So there's a really great book called Being Upright, which in the lineage of Zen that I practice, talks about the precepts. And the precepts are sort of the vows we take. And it was written by Rev Anderson, and it's actually a really great book. And I want to read something from this for... and I had this bookmark earlier, and somehow in my bag it got mixed up. Because I think that one of the ways in which we aren't aware of what happens when we're practicing with desire is that we use desire as a way to separate ourselves from other people. I can use my desire for connection, for intimacy, for a lack of loneliness, for sex, as a way to reify you into a certain kind of being, reify you into some kind of concrete entity, and then I can separate from you, and then I can be safe. And I think that Reb sort of talks about it really well. He says, how does sexual greed arise? Self and other are seen as separate. We project reality upon this separation. From a belief in the reality of this perception, the peaceful mind of the oneness of self and other is obscured. This belief wounds our consciousness, and the wound is a source of anxiety and pain. A powerful impulse arises to reunite the split mind. If this other were really other, then we could live without being in union with it. But because it is not really other, our yearning is very strong.
Who is that?
Reb Anderson. And the book is called Being Upright. And it's actually full of views on killing and views on what does it mean not to kill? What does it mean not to be possessive? This just happens to be what is it to not misuse sexuality? And one way of viewing sexuality. But at the same time, I don't want to say that there's a right way to do this. I don't want to say that there is only one way that this can be expressed. Because I think that physicality and physical expression and physical joy is important. I think that that adds something to the world. One of probably the most common question I get asked when I'm teaching, particularly around sex, is there's two. One is polyamory or promiscuity acceptable in the Buddhist milieu? And my response is if you can connect with someone in such a way that you're not separate from them, whether you know their name is unimportant. If you can't, then you're not, then it's a misuse of sexuality. The difficulty comes in the ways in which we lie to ourselves. We think that we have these skills, right? That I can separate. It took me a really long time to be able to admit that I get really jealous. Because I like to think that my boyfriend is my boyfriend, and you're not allowed to play with my boyfriend. And by play with, I mean talk to him. And it's very funny because that's actually what happens in my mind. And what's true about that is that as I started to explore, well, what's that about? And I could acknowledge, like, oh, look, I'm jealous. Well, what's that about? I'm afraid he's going to leave me. Well, instead of, like, dealing with, like, you're not allowed to talk to my boyfriend, I could just tell my boyfriend, look, I need some reassurance in this moment. Not that I have a boyfriend right now, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Is that an ad?
Is that an ad? No, it's not actually an ad. But there's a book currently out that people are reading in gay circles. The Gay Buddhist Sangha's book group is reading about it, and I'm actually interviewed extensively in it. And one of my friends who's part of the book group pointed out that it's actually the worst possible rendition of myself to pick up boys with. Anyway, back to what I was talking about, which was this idea of separation and this idea of studying the self and this idea of how is it that we are relating to each other? Because that's really what matters. Am I creating separation? Am I convincing myself that you somehow are not me? One of the teachings that my teacher tries to get me to really understand is this non-duality. This non-duality of what is it to live in a world where I'm not separate? Where whatever I do to you, I'm doing to myself, and whatever I do to myself, I'm doing to you. So by not expressing myself completely and fully in the moment, I damage myself. At the same time, I damage you because I'm not giving you the gift of a full expression of my own place in the world. So, and when I don't allow you to do that, when I try to objectify you and turn you just into some physicality, some idea I have about who you are as a man, or some idea of who you are as my partner, or whatever, as I try to reify you into an object, I no longer allow you the freedom to express yourself fully. And then I take that gift away from myself. So it not only damages you, it damages me. So how is it that we can relate to each other? Because I think, what happens is we think, oh, well, that means we all have to be celibate, or we all have to be not fall in love because love is attachment and blah, 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 blah. And I think that that's not true either. I spent 11 years celibate, and it's an amazing experience to study what it is to have desire and not stop, and to not fulfill that desire. I think there are a couple of ways of doing celibacy. One is that you just sort of deny that even exists and you lock it up in a little box and put it away. That's not actually what I did. I was lucky to be instructed and taught by people who said, no, you get to have a full expression. That, you're still a sexual person whether or not you're behaving in sexual ways. And so I got to really understand what it was that I liked, what attracted me, what didn't attract me, and the ways in which I used my desire, used my interest to suppress myself and to suppress you. It's really amazing how much you can really love someone without ever being sexual with them. How intimate you can get. And I started to look at past relationships, and I got to see places in which we would have great sex in the beginning. And then the closer we got, the less interested in sex with this person I was wanting to engage in. Because I was afraid of the intimacy. I was afraid of the ways in which bringing physicality into my emotional life then muddied the waters and gave you way more power than I was comfortable with. But then I started to sort of look at that, and then I got to fall in love with you without the physicality. And now I'm starting to look at what is it to fall in love completely and fully with physicality. And so my life today is really looking at, wow, I really like this guy. All the things are working. What is it that I want? What would be a way to express myself in this moment? I wrote, my teacher was just in Ireland, and about a year ago we decided that it was okay for me to start dating and that I was going to start doing this, but I had some guidelines and some boundaries I had for myself that I felt like worked for me. And so while I was in Ireland, I met this person and we started making out. And I wrote my teacher and I said, I made out with a guy. And my teacher wrote back with one simple word: pay attention. 2 words, but he wrote them as one. He's Irish. And it was a really interesting thing for me because I just wanted to jump to the next thing, right? I just wanted to jump from making out to bed, to dating. But when I paid attention, what really happened was I got to go and see this person as a full expression of a human being and myself as a full expression of a human being. And I got to go, that was really fun, but it's not working. You're not who I want to be with. Not how I am in the world normally. Because you pay a little bit of attention to me and I'm there. I really like to be liked. And I'll pretty much give you whatever you want to like me. And so for me, paying attention meant to look at what was my full expression of the moment. I want to leave enough time for questions, but I also want to read. When I perform weddings, one of the things that the nice thing about doing Buddhist weddings is there's not really a script. You get to make these things up. And so one of the things that I like to do is read poetry. And one of the couples I married last year actually introduced me to this poem that I really, really liked. And it's actually a couple who have an open marriage and have been together for about 40 years. And when I asked them why they were getting married, she said, because. I thought it was a great answer. This is a poem by Marge Piercy. Learning to love differently is hard. Love with the hands wide open. Love with the doors banging on their hinges, the cupboard unlocked, the wind roaring and whimpering in the rooms, rustling the sheets and snapping the blinds. That thwack like rubber bands in an open palm. It hurts to love wide open, stretching the muscles that feel as if they are made of wet plaster, then of blunt knives, then of sharp knives. It hurts to thwart the reflexes of grab, of clutch, to love and let go again and again. It pesters to remember the lover who's not in the bed, to hold back what is owed to the work, that gutters like a candle in a cave without air, to love consciously, conscientiously, concretely, constructively. I can't do it, you say, it's killing me, but you thrive. You glow on the street like a neon raspberry. You float and sail, a helium balloon, bright bachelor button blue and bobbing on the cold and hot winds of our breath, as we make and unmake in passionate diastole and systole the rhythm of our unbound loving, to have and not to hold, to love with minimized malice, hunger and anger, moment by moment, balanced. And that's not to say that the only way to be in relationship is to love. But I think that actually it is. Because when you're with someone completely in the moment, and you're allowing them to be a full expression of themselves, and you're allowing yourself to be a full expression of yourself, what happens is that's love. Now, it doesn't have to be in love, as we like to say. It doesn't have to be forever love. But that's loving our planet. That's loving ourselves. That's loving the Buddha nature in everyone. One of my great avatars is the Bodhisattva Never Disparage. And I think last time I was here, I spoke about the Bodhisattva Never Disparage, who his whole practice is to just tell people he loves them. That's it. He goes around telling people he loves them. And I think by showing up every day completely, that's what we do. Whether it's sexual or not. So I want to do a little experiment. I like exercises. I'd like everybody to just close their eyes for a minute. Get comfortable. And I want you to think about, to feel in your body, your desire. Whether it's sexual or chocolate, that car. Feel desire. Let it fill your body completely. And then look at yourself relating to this desire. What do you do? What comes up around it? What's there with it? What is your deepest intention with this desire? Is this desire pulling you? What would it take for you to just experience it? To let it rest there and register without any attachment. How is that transformed? What does it become? open your eyes when you're ready. And maybe we can talk from that place together. Yeah.
I felt, for me, it's hunger, because I get hunger a lot. And it's something I've been working with for a while, but when I could just be with it as a visceral experience in my consciousness, I saw it's just wanting, just wanting. Like, that's okay.
Yeah. It's amazing the way we judge ourselves. We think, oh, if I'm hungry, that's a bad thing, and if I'm wanting, that's a bad thing. Instead of just letting it be what it is. And that's the ways in which we separate ourselves from other people. We separate ourselves from our own experience. So to just have the experience of hunger. Yes?
For me, it was food too on my diet. It was the poppy seed cake at the Russian bakery at 22nd and Geary, approximately.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was that my parts of my body tensed up, my nostrils flared, my throat salivated. And I guess the interesting piece of reflection is that those were somewhat uncomfortable. And as I became more conscious of it, they didn't disappear, but they decreased.
Yeah. It's amazing how when we just allow things to be there, they lose some sort of urgency.
So for me, as I thought about it, it's more of a desire towards doing something different, professionally and all with my life. And so when you said, does it draw you or pull you or something, what came to me is I'm more chasing it, even though I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's all this judgment that comes around that, like, well, why don't you know? And at this stage of your life, and it's just like, so my whole body just feels this weight and tension around it. And the idea of, well, just letting it be wanting, really doesn't satisfy me. Because something needs to be done. I don't know. And the idea of just being with that, like, for the rest of my life, uncertain, is not satisfying.
Life is always uncertain.
Well,
Even if you have a job. I remember being in a Dharma talk with Pema Chodron once, and somebody was talking, and Pema looked at this person and just said, "Whoever told you Buddhism was safe?" We want certainty. We want to have some kind of ground underneath us, but the truth is there's not any. And the best practice you can have is to be in uncertainty. To really experience uncertainty and find stability there, to find a way to be upright there, to find some way to breathe into it, to not let it throw you too far off just being here. You almost got T-boned on the way into the place here. Uncertainty. somehow that's an easier uncertainty than not having an idea about your job.
Can you explain what T-boned is?
Oh.
Sexual.
I was trying to think, was there some sort of innuendo I could go with there? But,
I was on my bicycle and almost got, hit by somebody making a right turn.
right.
Well, I was there when you told the story, but I thought T-boned. I've never heard of that. So I'm thinking, what's going on in people's minds right now?
Broadside, yeah.
I would have T-boned him.
It would have hurt me more.
You don't know that.
Yeah.
Well, I know this is sort of similar to what Tom said in some respects, but for me, when I think about this, several things about which I have the greatest desire, whether they're separate things or just one thing, I'm really not quite sure. But my desires of my wanting to have the desire fulfilled calls forth behaviors that are strictly oriented towards accomplishing that goal, which may have very, very little to do with me, and sort of leave me in the process of doing all that very inauthentically, which is not gratifying and probably not oriented towards success, whereas being authentic is. But it's such an immediate response that it's difficult to watch it happen, and then you're just there, and then there's of course a lot of negative judgment if things don't work out, which it just all cycles backwards to. It's a very, very discouraging place, which, remaining authentic and present would really be the way to be pursuing all of these things. But it's I don't know, there's something just about the way I grew up to be in the world.
So tell me what would define success in that situation? Define success.
Would be a sense of fulfillment, a sense of accomplishment, whether it's professional or relationship-wise, as opposed to this constant yearning, seeking, desire for.
So it's a story. Yeah. It's a story about, and fulfillment comes from getting what you want.
Right.
And getting what you want means success.
Right.
So I was telling you about this guy that I was dating, and one of my friends was saying how sad she was that it didn't work, and I said it worked perfectly. I had really great practice. It was a great dress rehearsal. Now, for her story, that wasn't successful, because I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't fulfill anything. But from my story, it was incredibly successful, because I showed up completely. So you might want to think about your stories about success and study those. Study that story. The founder of our school of Buddhism, my particular school of Buddhism, was this 13th century monk named Daigan, and he's kind of prolific. But one of the things that he wrote about is that to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to be awakened by myriad things. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened by myriad things. The interesting thing about that is that I'm not even doing the awakening. So I study this thing called the self. I study these stories that I've created about my life and about my situation and about what is success and what's right and what's wrong. And I study this dualism that I create in the world and push forth onto everyone else. And as I start to study those, I start to forget about them. They lose their interest. If you've sat zazen for meditation for very long, you start to repeat the same story over and over again, and you just kind of get bored with it. Anybody who's been on a long retreat, after about day 4, you just kind of go, really? That again? Come on. Come up with something new. And then there's room for awakening there. There's room for the dharmas of the world to just awaken you.
I've been sitting meditation for a long time, and it seems like a lot of things are sort of interconnected. But the one thing that always surfaces for me is a strong desire to be in the next moment. I mean, just always wanting to be here. And when I sort of relate to all the desires that pop up, they all pretty much revolve around this whole thing of wanting to be here. So in meditation, you get a chance to really look at that because you're going to be here. You know, it's not like you just get to go into the next instant and something's going to change. It will, but it's a continuing process. It's the sitting, and it's being lived. But I rarely sit when it doesn't come up. You know, this next instant, whatever it's going to be, I need it.
It's interesting to have the desire for enlightenment. The reason I have my teacher actually is because one of the first conversations I had with him, I told him I wanted an A in Zen. And he said, well, let's start with an F and see how you do. And my conversation with him started from that place, because it really was. I was like, well, wait a minute, that's not the script, right? Like, you're supposed to be this really wise guy, and you're supposed to tell me how unimportant having an A is. And instead, you, like, give me an F. Like, what is up with that? And same thing, right? So, like, I think, like, oh, I have to do these practices perfectly. And what's interesting about Zen, and as you practice Zen, what you find out, it's full of forms and rituals, and we're very high church. Which makes my life as a sister really great. And what's really interesting, though, is that you start to see this place in which here's the form, and then here's how you're doing it. And they never match. So, you know, I put together this fabulous ceremony and this fabulous wedding, and then whatever happens, happens. And it's never what's on the paper. You know? Every morning we do service, and it's never right. So, yeah, what is it to have that desire for awakening, to do it right, but then to like let go of that desire, to move beyond that desire, and to just stay upright, not let that desire pull you forward, to just stay upright, even in the midst of that, to go beyond that desire for what is considered wholesome. Yeah.
What came up for me in that exercise is when I feel desire, it's a kind of tension. It's an approach of avoidance at the same time. It's like I want it and I want to hold back a little bit both. And I think what's helpful to me is that I don't feel like it has to happen immediately in this moment. It's like if this is meant to be, it'll happen. And if it isn't meant to be, it won't. So I think that letting go of that immediacy, that urgency, is helpful. And just letting it see how it unfolds. I'll have another opportunity if it's going to be.
Suzuki Roshi once said, the best way to train a horse is to give it a big pasture. Right? Space is such an amazing thing. To give yourself space. It's a great gift. Sister.
Well, there's so many objects of desire in my world, anyway. And but the thing that I'm trying to discern is the difference between just appreciating the desire, looking at myself, detaching, and not being courageous enough to actually express it and to, actually try to move towards the desire. So I'm not sure that there's an answer. It's like, but you could spend forever watching yourself in that dichotomy, but it feels a little flaccid.
Mm-hmm. Don't detach. In being engaged, fully experiencing your desire is not detached. Studying desire is not detached. You should never detach from what's happening right now. And that's not flaccid. Detached is flaccid, yes, totally. Who wants to live that? And the truth is that we're human beings, and so sometimes, even in the midst of our desire, we'll go chase it. Great, do it. But then do it fully. Right? Some stuff just calls us. When I started practicing Zen, I knew I wanted to be a priest. It just called to me. I had lots of stories about that, what that had to look like, or how that was going to be, and how I was going to be, and all of that. But then you have to move beyond that too. But sometimes you just get called. Sometimes you just get pulled. So be pulled. But don't detach. That's not at all what I mean by study the self. Studying the self is a complete engagement with what it is that's happening. You're not over here studying the self. Yeah.
What you just mentioned, sometimes something pulls you, making you realize that that's what it is for me. Nothing's pulling me, and I so want to be engaged and pulled and, interested. Inspired, A desire for a desire.
And sometimes you just got to buy your own damn flowers. Right? Like I want to be swept off my feet, but sometimes you just got to walk up to somebody and say hi. And sometimes you just got to buy your own damn flowers. Like you're not going to be pulled. So then you just have to do the work.
I'm laughing because that's what I always do.
You buy your own damn flowers?
You don't have to be the one who goes out, but I do.
Say more about that.
Say more about it?
Yeah.
If I see somebody I want to know, that I want to engage, I'll walk up to them and I'll engage them. I'm always... Yes, you do. I do that. I absolutely do that. And some of my friends love it about me. Some of my friends, they say, well, of course they're never going to respond to you because you're, chasing them down the street. I don't regret it.
Who doesn't like to be chased?
Some people don't like to be chased.
Really?
Yeah. So be it.
Yeah.
So be it.
That's what restraining orders are for.
Yeah, I'm not sure stalking's the answer. But But do you buy your own damn flowers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a vase right in as I walk in my door, and it's always got flowers in it, so at least,
I was asking the guy who chases people.
I absolutely do.
He does
does, Jim. I absolutely do.
And do you let other people chase you?
Ooh. It's getting good, man.
I probably never paid enough attention to know if they're doing it or not. That's a great question. That's a very good question.
Study that.
I'm usually so focused that I probably, as a matter of fact, that has happened to me. I have been with friends, walk across the street, they said, "Did you see the way that guy looked at you?" And I say, "Absolutely not. Didn't notice it at all."
So it's interesting because, it's just another way to separate, right?
Right?
Like being the assertive one, being the aggressive one, creating this identity of, I'm this guy.
I'm in control.
Yeah. So what would it be to study that and to see what, maybe I'm some other guy too. That's not to say you have to stop,
No.
but really see, how is that serving me, and is that how I want to be served? Right?
I think it's interesting that chasers always see that they're sort of in control when they're rarely the ones who say no.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's true. You were laughing. I want to know what you were laughing at.
Oh, God. Well, I'm a kind of a tap that wants to be, who's an emotional bottom and wants to be tapped.
How's that working for you?
I'm just hoping to find somebody who can tap me, and it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's just a paradox. That's all it is, and it's just kind of like, because I can be like Bob. I know how to hunt, and I'm really good at that, and it's been for years. But it's kind of like sometimes I get it, and it's like, this is really what you want. There's where you go to look at what
Right.
works, what doesn't work. But not that many people. But then also, I'm the same thing with somebody who says, "That guy disagrees with you, Jerry," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't see him." So.
Yeah.
It's really interesting today because, okay, I'm just going to come out and just say what I have to. But when you said the difference between, how about craving chocolate or sex? And I had to say, well, which one? And I'm going, and today my meditation was all about having sex. But what came up for me when you said, let's look at this, it's like, I looked at it almost like doing a painting. It's like, I'd like to have an expression with someone through sex. And it doesn't have to last forever, it doesn't have to, but it's just kind of like, I wanted that closeness again, and that.
Right.
It's been a while.
Isn't that what we all want, though?
Definitely.
And what are the ways that we stop ourselves? What are the ways that we hinder that? See, when we study our desire, we find out all of the ways in which desire plays out in our life and doesn't serve us. Because we all say we want this thing, and then that's not how we act. Why is that?
Fear.
Or, 900 other things. The way we're socialized, shame, particularly as gay men, and the way we're socialized. And, when I came out in the tea rooms and the parks and we didn't even care about what your last name was. I remember having conversations with people who would say, well, what's your name? And I'd say, why? You're not going to use it. And really mean that. So what are the ways that I'm stopping myself from getting what I want? Or what I think I want? Do I really want? Is that really what I want? Right? Is that really what no, because how many times have we gotten what we want and just go, oh, that's not really what I want. That is not, I really wanted, I thought I wanted fish, but man, I really wanted steak.
But your example of making out with a guy, really able to work, then choose again.
Right.
Sometimes we just thought, oh, this is never going to work.
Right.
Right. So it's like this choice, and it's hard.
It is.
It is.
And it's really funny because we think that the precepts or these vows we make for ourselves, like to not misuse sexuality, is about not misusing sexuality and not hurting other people. But it's really about studying this one. Being in this life completely. We all get born into the skin bag. So what am I going to do about it? Right? don't waste this precious human life. So it's about this one. And by not hurting this one, I'm not going to manage to hurt other people out there. Because all of the pain that I've caused out there comes because of my own pain that I've caused myself. That's why we study the self. Study this one. Because really, this is where all the change happens. And we're out of time.
We're out of time. Will you be able to stay during the social hour?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you all very much.
Announcements? Who's our host?
I'm the host, and enjoy the tea and refreshments. If you have tea, there's hot water, but please wash and dry your cup. I'll be going around with the Donna Bowl. Suggested donation is $5 to $8, more if you're able. There's a newcomer sign-up sheet. If you wish to receive our newsletter, please write down your street address and email address. And often some members go out for lunch after the meeting, usually meet at the front door around 12:30.
Tom.
So today is our newsletter mailing endeavor, and they just showed they just showed up from the printer. That was in question. I thought we would put it off, and I was reminded that we only have extra time after our time slot here on this day of the month. So if we don't do it now, it's off to next month. So I need about 8 to 10 volunteers who are willing to stay at least an hour and help fold, staple, label, stamp. By a show of hands. Great. Thank you so much.
I've been involved in restarting another group called the Gay Intellectual Salon. And from the conversation today and other times, there might be people here who are interested in it. It meets once a month, and the next one, this coming Wednesday evening, is on religion and spirituality. So it seemed appropriate to mention.
Gay intellectual what?
Gay Intellectual Salon, for hopefully intelligent discussion. And now that we've restarted 6 months ago, now that we're 30 or 40, we're meeting in our currently once a month meeting on Wednesday evenings at the Gay Community Center. And the way to find out about it is to go to meetup.com, M-E-T, meetup.com, and put in San Francisco Gay Intellectual Salon or some of those, and you'll find it easily.
San Francisco Zen Center will be marching in the Gay Pride Parade, and everybody is invited to join us. And if you need more information, you can look on Zen Center's website. If you're not on Queer Dharma's email list, if you want to be on Queer Dharma's email list, I can do that for you. Just give me your email address. But yeah, everybody's invited.
Jerry?
Hi. Next week we have a Dharma Duo. That's where we have 2 members of our Sangha speak. And next week will be John Galloway and Bami, and I'm going to probably butcher his last name. But we all know Bami. And also, Larry Wish, who is part of our Sangha, his memorial service is going to be Saturday, June 23rd, is that correct? At 3 Stone Park, which is in Berkeley. And I'll try to get something on the listserv with more information.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, let's stand for our dedication of merit.
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you, guys.
for today.
It will be in July. Because we're not in June because we're not doing the
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.